I don't think there's ever been an episode which was more explosive. Split the room down the middle. On one side you had people who love him. On the other side you had people who were very impartial to him. But the next guest we're bringing back on, former Lindenwood Lion, former Melbourne Rebel, Ayden Hurst, live from the UK. Mate, how you doing?
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for getting me back on. I think it was a little last minute call up, but happy to sort of fill that gap if needed.
Yeah, look, welcome to the podcast world. Unfortunately, things happen, and sometimes you need to reach out to. Sometimes you need to break the emergency glass, smash if needed. But you're always coming back on, so perfect time to chat. I mean, obviously, a lot of time has passed. A lot of things have happened since we last chat. What have you been up to recently, mate? What's new in your part of the world? Where are you in the world?
So I'm currently in the UK, living in a place down south called Plymouth. Really nice part of the world, by the water. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of back home, even though Eltham or Montmorency is absolutely nowhere near the water.
Mm.
So yeah, ever since we spoke, mate, graduated from university in the US, worked my way over to the UK on an ancestry visa. Was quite lucky to sort of have that avenue in. Started off playing a bit of cricket and then got myself into a sort of semi-professional rugby system down here at Plymouth, and then just been ticking along there. Done a little bit of coaching along the way, working full time on top of it. So yeah, busy, mate.
Busy at all. The coaching we're going to get into because that's a large part of what we're going to touch on today. But let's talk about your cricket. That's how we know each other, and you're always a pretty average cricketer, to be honest. It sort of staggers me. One, the fact that you managed to get yourself in decent nick, and two, you actually became somewhat decent at cricket. What's the level of cricket like over there? Because you see these videos, and it's like Sunday league trash, and it just makes you shake your head.
Yeah, it's a funny one because the old adage in the UK was you technically weren't a town or a village unless you had a pub, a church, or a cricket club. So that was sort of back when. So you'll drive through the middle of nowhere in the UK and there'll be a cricket club. So the standard varies. The standard I was playing was half decent. Very good standard in a good part of the world in Kent. But yeah, mate, it's if you want to look for good cricket, you can definitely find it over here. That's for sure, in abundance. Except for
Yeah.
their national team, that's for sure.
No, I was thinking for some reason I was thinking about like a joke. I always think about jokes I could do, and I picture myself in an England cricket team, and I just sort of say, like I was like, what's that league called where you see all the videos where all the blokes are shit, and they start rattling off things, and I'm just like, oh no, sorry, that was actually the Ashes. Watching
Yeah.
your team play.
There's a certain element to being Aussie, whereas the last time I was in the UK before with the Ashes was going on, I genuinely wouldn't have people come to my side of the bar because I was Aussie while the Ashes was going on. So it was nice to be able to sort of wake up here, be around it, and be the one Aussie in Plymouth during the Ashes this year as well. So
Are you sure that it was just the Ashes that people didn't want to come to your side of the bar, or was it a little bit of the
100%, mate.
Yeah.
100%. Hey, I was best bartender, but mate, it's one of those things where you've got to keep your mouth shut a little bit. I am a proud Aussie, as you can probably tell. I was actually at Somerset the other day watching the cricket, and then just like one of the county games, and I just heard over the loudspeaker, and from the river end, Peter Siddle, and I've
Wow,
got up, I've
that's
gone
enough.
absolutely nuts, and everyone was just like, "Who's this bloke?" But it's just like seeing the Aussies do well on a big stage, considering how small we are. So
No, 100%. I've been very hard on England of late, apparently on this podcasting platform. I don't know where it's come from. Maybe I'm just a little grumpy, getting grumpy at my old age. As a man who lives in the UK, tell me about it because I've never been. Obviously, I'm going to be heading over soon as my brother's moving over there. But
yeah.
am I completely irrational in my hate for the motherland? I guess you call it, or whatever disgraceful shit they call themselves.
Yeah, the soap dodgers. No, it's a funny one. Once you move over here, you kind of get a lot of stick for being Aussie. You get a lot of the oh, you're a convict, and I've got a thicker skin to it now. But it's just I just come back with you're jealous you didn't get sent out here. But it's kind of there is that mutual respect. It obviously does make it easier with the language and the cultures are quite similar. But yeah, you do get a lot of stick for being the lone Aussie, that's for sure. But see, you go to London nowadays, mate. London is just full of Aussies now, like absolutely everywhere. Yeah, so that's not too much of an issue. But in backwater Devon, where I am, mate, we don't really get too many of us down here.
No, backwater Devon's known for its lack of non-English people in there. So
Oceania.
Yeah, it's great that you're the oceanic visitors from the oceanic region, but it's great to see you out there and having a good time.
No, I'm enjoying it though. It is good, mate. I would recommend it. 21. It's a lot easier now for Aussies to get over here, so it definitely is something that I would recommend doing for sure.
No, absolutely. So last time we spoke, you were obviously finishing up at Lindenwood, and you sort of touched on something that really struck me in that conversation was how you sort of said, I knew I wasn't going to play Super Rugby, but I knew that I had a chance to get something out of this game, being rugby union. So talk about the transition from Lindenwood, sort of where you are now, and sort of, I guess, continuing to embrace that whole, hey, I'm not going to make it, professionally at the highest level, which I originally wanted to, but taking sort of, what this game, the pathways that it's sort of, I guess, like creating for you.
Yeah. I'm still a bit in that sort of bubble at the moment now with my footy. It's quite tough in regards to, it's again, one of the reasons why I chose rugby over sort of AFL was the fact you can travel with it and sort of the breadth and sort of width of the game. I was extremely lucky to sort of go through what I went through in the 4 years and sort of get that world experience, but then also get that expensive bit of paper at the end of it to say that I finished university. It's funny, I came back to the UK with a plan with all these sort of rugby ideas in my mind and spoke to a couple of clubs and of various different levels. And it's funny here, mate, it's a bit of a cowboy show over here. It's you got teams
I love that.
in the fourth, fifth. Yeah, you got fourth, fifth division clubs throwing out 350 quid a game, give you a massive house, sort you out a job, and you've got clubs that are in the higher divisions not having that availability, just generally either because they're either poorly run or they're just a genuine community club and they do really well or whatever. So it's a very, very weird sort of spectrum in which I think in your terms and all that, you wouldn't have Heidelberg West paying someone $600 a game, $700. Well, potentially not, I don't know. But compared to like your sort of Montmorency's, your Heidelbergs and whatnot, so I came over here and it was a bit of a shock to the system in that regard. So sort of set on a club in which I visited a few, set on Plymouth, which was sort of something I wanted to sort of get that love back for the game. Really famous club in England. Sort of, it was them and Exeter Chiefs that were fighting to be the best clubs in Devon.
Geez, that sounds good.
Look where Exeter are now. So it's a club with rich history. Look, I've had another tough year with injuries, and I think early on I had a couple of injuries, and the clock started to tick again, being like, look, I need to make sure that there's something else again. All well and good that I had my degree, but I wanted to stay involved with rugby. So again, like you spoke about, the opportunity to coach sort of fell into my lap. I've coached cricket. I've coached a little bit of rugby before, but to sort of get a head coaching role was something in which I sort of saw my way into rugby as well. And I absolutely loved it. But yeah, the body, I don't know if it's just my body doesn't agree with it or whatever, but yeah, it's been another tough year, which again has brought on that I don't think I'm going to make it, turning into should I really be doing this anymore kind of questions.
Sounds like your summer trips to Santorini have just been a little bit, probably a little bit too enjoyable, and you've just come a little bit banged up in more ways than one.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get. That's probably how they did it, to be fair.
Yeah.
But
Let's talk about the coaching, because that's something I'm really interested in picking your brain on. Talk about where you're coaching, what the sort of, I guess, what the setup is, like age, league, or explain all that sort of jazz, and then we'll dive into philosophies and I'll really grill you on some stuff.
Yeah, easy. So I was quite lucky. There was a job flying around that my housemate was offered to head coach at Plymouth Uni, so the main sort of university in the town. The UK is quite different to the US, in which most cities have universities and some splinter unis. Not the biggest university, but sort of really well known in that regard. Definitely not for their rugby, but the opportunity, he passed up on that, and I kind of jumped on the opportunity. Sort of made sure I knew a kid who played there, so I asked the chairman's number through him, got in touch with the chairman, sat down with the chairman, the captains and whatnot, and just sort of sat down with them and put my pitch forward. And it was funny, at the end of that chat, they kind of looked at me. We just met up at like the student union over a beer or whatever, had a chat, and they all looked at us and like, you do realize you're actually the only coach to ever put forward a training plan to us. I was like, oh, what do you mean?
Good
And they're
start.
like, genuinely, like every coach we've had before has either just made us play touch for 2 hours or just done full contact for 2 hours. Like, you've actually come here with a training plan, how you want it to work. And I was kind of like, well, isn't that the norm in a sense? But I think that kind of sort of says a little bit to my sort of passion towards the game. It's owed me a lot, so I owe it a lot. And from there, the ball started to roll. It was funny. The standard was quite funny. There was a few lads that had played English Saxons, which are like, it was just like Australia A, sort of like equivalent. And then there had lads that had like barely played before. So I was
Me.
the main coach of like 80 boys trying to mix that together. It was quite tough. But being close to age to these boys, they were like 18 to 24, so my age. It was tough to start with, because I think they kind of saw me as a bit of like a pushover, a mate. But then I kind of just wanted to make sure that, look, I kind of half know what I'm talking about in regards to the game. And I kind of just moved forward with that. And the boys, I had tremendous respect for the boys, and they ended up having tremendous respect for me. And I can't thank them enough to sort of for how easy and the transition was for my first head coaching role, and that brought a lot of success for the team. The most successful year they've ever had, and it was terrific. There was a lad whose grandparents came to every game, no matter where we played. And after our last game, they came up to me and sort of gave me a hug and a kiss. Were like, thank you very much, like, for putting in so much effort. Like, we've never seen this before. So you don't do it for that at all, but it definitely, when getting that little bit of recognition goes a long way. And yeah, it was tough, mate. The uni system over here is quite like the frat houses in the US. There's a lot of pulling your pants down, drinking out of certain places, drinking different fluids. I'm sitting in the front of the bus with my head in the book, and the boys are doing like Spider-Man crawls naked on the top of the bus, and just like trying to turn a blind eye to it. But it's very different over here in the UK. It's very like, get it out. I'm like, no, that's not me.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword when you do see this with a lot of, I guess, coaches who are similar age to the players, because on one hand, you can relate to the younger players a lot easier, and you get that kind of respect. But then on the other hand, that sometimes can go too far, and that, you need to give them that old, Andy Roddick serve down the line when they're acting up and being boys too much. So, like, how do you approach that kind of thing? Like, when you can sort of see that, hey, the boys are slipping here, and like, I need to give them an absolute spray here, but it's like it's a fine line, I guess.
Yeah, I made sure that I allowed that mutual respect to be something that was seen very early on, and that it wasn't all just rugby. So here in the UK as well, they have like student unions. So like, you'll have like, it'll be a student union where there's like a club and a bar and whatnot. And every Wednesday after the games, I'd make sure I'd go back with the boys, like, no matter if we've been at home or away, have a beer with them, and then have one or two, then duck off. I think that was kind of good to for those lads to kind of see me out and about as well. Sort of intermingling, getting to know the person before the player.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was some points where I kind of had to put my finger on the pulse and kind of circumvent a few things that away from rugby as well. There was we had a female physio. It's just little things like that. Like you can't get away with that stuff anymore.
No.
You can't get away with boys showing disrespect in that sense. And I don't know if it's just ingrained or whatnot, but the boys warmed really well to kind of that bit of toe in the arse. And like I said, we got tremendous success, and that wasn't just through on-field stuff. The boys made sure they had a terrific presence like outside the field, and yeah, it was tough to kind of flick that switch and kind of be a hard ass on them sometimes, but I had a really good group of leaders around me who kind of towed that line as well, and made sure that it wasn't just me. So again, like super thankful for that. But we won the cup final, and I ended up having a bit of a big night with the boys, which was good. So that was a
that might make pre-season a little bit harder.
Yeah, well, if I get offered the job again, mate, I've got to get offered the job first. But yeah, mate, it was cool to see those boys in that scope, and they really appreciated that as well. But yeah,
talk about picking leaders, because you're going into this. I know you've shown a lot of balls by actually calling the chairman and saying, "Hey, you just offered it to old mate, but he doesn't want it. So how about you just give it to me?" I like that. A lot of the times people sort of wait for their opportunity. Very few people go ahead and grab it by the nut bag. So kudos for that. But talk about sort of going into, I guess, a room that's relatively unknown in terms of people. You don't know what their personalities are like. You don't know what they're like on the field. How do you go ahead and pick your leaders? Or is it sort of one of those things where you let the early weeks and months, you let them sort of, the leaders sort of come to the forefront themselves?
Yeah, it was kind of made it a little bit easy for me, because obviously university of lads that have been there for 3 or 4 years or whatnot, they have a nice little, and they have like AGMs over here where they sort of put people forward. And so I already had a main captain, a vice captain, and then a twos captain sort of picked out. But then, like you said, so our first captain, he was injured for most of the year. He dislocated his kneecap quite early on, and then was sort of coming back. So it was funny, the twos captain ended up sort of filling his way into the ones and then actually becoming a really good leader. But that was just purely just by me watching, listening, and kind of taking a step back. But I think one of the main things I sort of envisioned is that you all have sort of, I know it sounds quite cliche, but I don't think enough coaches sort of emphasize that you've all got a job to do. There's a game plan for a reason. You're all involved in that, and don't be afraid to sort of make those mistakes. I think now sport, there's so much pressure, ridiculous amounts of pressure, and I'm one that I get in my own head with sport and all that stuff as well. So I would have liked to have had a coach down the line that kind of said, "Look, you make mistakes, blah blah blah." But I made sure for those leaders as well that they weren't just the only boys in the team steering the ship. I was very lucky to have a lot of boys that sort of not did what I don't want boys to just do what they're told. I want boys to sort of express themselves, but there was also lads that helped toe the line that weren't in their leadership group. So you kind of just got to feel your way into it. I'm lucky it was a long season, but yeah, I was quite impressed with the boys and how quickly they turned it around, especially coming off a COVID year where they'd literally not known each other, and there was 80 new boys coming together. They did a really good job sort of molding that sort of friendship together for sure, which made it a lot easier for me.
Yeah, no, beautiful. Talk about the actual, I guess, the university system itself. Like, so do you go ahead and play against, say, the University of Ipswich Town or the University of Geordie Shore, or what's the sort of setup? Are you sort of traveling around just the area, or is it all across? I don't even know. I don't know anything about geography or anything, mate. Explain it to me.
No, it was so you have your university. So in the UK, you've got like Durham, that are a really good rugby school, Leeds Beckett, Exeter, terrific rugby schools. So they'll have like 8 to 10 teams that'll play on a Wednesday, because that's when all the sport is. So we played Exeter fifths, I'm pretty sure. Bournemouth, their ones, Bristol, and then there was one more, Plymouth Marjon, so the other Plymouth University. So we did a little bit of travel as well, which was good. It was a great way for me to sort of see the country as well, and kind of take a day out for it. So
See
yeah,
how
it was good to
unimpressing
get a
it
bit of
is.
traveling. Yeah, honestly. Oh mate, small city UK, something different. I saw a bloke today dressed in all camouflage with a
How'd you see
walking
him?
stick, and then yeah, well, exactly, with a high vis hat on, and then using his walking stick as kind of like a samurai sword. And I'm just kind of like, it really sums up. Well, down here especially, it's never a dull moment at all down in the UK. But look, it was a great way for me to see the country, and the boys, like I said, were successful, so it made the trips back a little bit easier as well. Except when you are dealing with about like 30 odd drunk uni boys and you're sober, it does get a little bit taxing.
So you sort of mentioned early on that you came with a plan, and obviously you're a very passionate man in terms of your rugby, and you've always loved rugby. Who have you sort of looked at in terms of, I guess, game styles that you've sort of gone, all right, that's the way I want the game to be played, regardless of what level I'm coaching, or maybe as a coach that you were like, shit, I just love the way he goes about it. And, that's sort of what you, I guess, based your ideology on.
It's I'll keep it quite like dulled down, but rugby in the last 4 or 5 years has gone through a really awkward stage of just becoming really, really boring. Kick to the corner, line out, driving maul, score, kick to the corner, especially with all these these new rules coming in. So there was no one coach or sort of anything like that I kind of looked at. The main coach I look up to actually isn't a rugby player. It's Sean McVay, the LA Rams, the young LA Rams coach that just won the Super Bowl. It kind of shows that sort of age isn't a limit, or experience playing isn't a limit in that sense. It's if you're passionate about it. But look, I kind of just used a bundle of all the plans and sort of plays I've used before, and sort of took a lot from a lot of coaches. I've been very lucky to have a lot of terrific coaches throughout my life in all sports. So kind of taking a little bit from them, and then just kind of obviously working with the players you've got. You're not going to run direct at a team if you've got a small side, or you're not going to kick if you've got a lad who can't kick. So it's yeah,
that makes sense.
it kind of just ironed out the creases throughout the year, and yeah, like I said, it was successful. But it's funny, I do look up to Sean McVay the most, and I actually listen to a lot of what he speaks about, because he has his own podcast as well, where he doesn't talk about sport as well, and he's just genuinely just absolutely loves the sport. But then the moment he gets home from it, he's got a family, he just switches off. I found throughout my whole sort of trying to make it into rugby, trying to make it pro and all that stuff, I just never switched off. But then went the complete other way, where it just became like rugby was there, and then I was too busy going out with my mates because I'd gone so hard so early. So finding that balance now has been something that definitely helped in my playing and my coaching for sure.
Yeah, it's that burnout factor. Like, I've experienced that. Like, I experienced that with hockey. My whole life and identity was warped around just hockey nonstop. Like, I would watch hockey all day, and then I'd go to hockey that night. And like, by the end of it, I just became fucking exhausted of it. And and the saddest part is it started to get to a point where I was literally living overseas in Canada, the home of hockey, which I went to for hockey purposes. And I was like, I'm starting to hate this game. Like, I would look at my schedule and I'm like, I've got to sit down and watch, Slovakia versus, Czechoslovakia. I've just 100% butchered that, but that doesn't matter. And like, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this. And like, that's kind of when I knew, I'm like, I've absolutely overdone this year, and it's time to just, like, drop it completely altogether, which is what I did. But it's such a fine balance. And that's probably one of the things I respect about, I guess, professional athletes or professional, I guess, coaches or whatever, who can make their whole life that, because I'll never understand it. Like, I did it for a while, but eventually it gets to a point where you just, doesn't matter how much you love the game, you just literally burn yourself out, and it ruins the way you look at the sport.
100%. and I'm at that level now with my sort of playing and sort of stuff like that. I think also it has to do with how much time I've spent in rehabbing for injuries and stuff like that. It gets to you, it really does. But I genuinely there is rugby on all the time here, and I genuinely watch more Premier League football, like soccer, or I watch more NRL, or I watch more AFL than I do rugby. And my identity has been, like you said, Ayden Hurst, the rugby player. I've been traveling for rugby. I went to university for rugby. First thing I did when the UK came to the UK, I found a rugby club. So I'm so glad as well that my parents, even though they've put in so much effort and time and money into me sort of in that sport, are so good to just be like, mate, as long as you're happy, we don't care. Because that's one of the reasons you do it as well. You do it to sort of make them proud, and no matter what, they always are going to be. Well, depends, but I think as long as they see you happy, that's all that matters. But my parents have been so supportive. I've been so open with them about it. They're just like, mate, do what you got to do.
I guess one of the earlier episodes I did was with Andrew Sturgis, who's the head coach at Coburg Football Club. And there was one thing that he said, an incredibly smart man, and what I would consider a different type of coach, especially for AFL, from an AFL point of view. His philosophy was, I asked him that question. I said, what's your philosophy? And how does it change as the game changes? And he's like, my philosophy never changes. And it's literally, I believe it was, he's like, treat a person as they are, they'll remain as they are. Treat a person as, what they can be. And, then that's when you sort of reap the rewards. How do you sort of look at, I guess, maybe not your philosophy in terms of playing style, because that's what we've already sort of touched on that, but how do you sort of look at things from like a whole in terms of, what type of a coach do you want to be? Like, do you want to be that, that guy who coaches, at this level and sort of really makes an impact on sort of that younger men, going to formative years, or, someone who wants to be like that Sean McVay who says, fuck it. I want to be 30 years old and coaching. I don't even know what the IPA cup or whatever. Let's just call it the IPA cup or whatever it is.
No, and it's a funny one, because this will probably, if we chat this time next year, it'll probably change, because I'll be coaching a bit more of it. It's because I'm coming out of my playing career directly into it. I'm obviously still going to be a little bit pent up in the sense of still getting the adrenaline as you would with the rugby and whatnot. But I think one thing that won't change for me is there's a person before the player. And I think you get the best out of the person, you're going to get the best out of the player. And that's not always going to be the case, don't get me wrong. But I think if you show a touch effort to just be like, hey, mate, how you doing? Or, hey, what's going on? Or if you can see Johnny is upset, or if you see something like that, or you see, more importantly as well, you see their body's absolutely fucked. I understand you there's certain levels in which you push through, but you can tell if Johnny's playing 30 games of rugby a week, he's training, it's been 6 months, it's freezing outside, he's obviously limping around. Just tell him to sit out a session, you know what I mean? Or he'll tell it, or put forward, mate, are you okay? I just think I've been a part of so many programs where that's kind of been dusted to the side, and it kind of gets overlooked because it's just a cattle market. And I understand you're in a performance business, especially at the highest level, but these people have been picked for a reason. Why not get the best out of them? Squeeze all the juice they got, but make sure you're not fucking breaking the pulp. That's a really good way to think about it. You can squeeze an orange, get everything you can out of it. If you squeeze it too hard, it's gonna fucking bust in your hands. So I reckon just making sure that I kind of keep on top of that is one thing that I definitely won't change. But moving forward through my coaching career, mate, I think the philosophy will change.
Yeah.
Depending on who I coach, what I coach, but ideally, mate, there's a massive market over here for sort of secondary school. They got a really good secondary schools program here. I'd love to get myself into one of those lads who are getting into academy systems, kind of been there, done that kind of thing, got to kind of assist them through that. And they're very proud to be at the school. The schools they're at, especially if they're good at rugby. So I'd love to work with lads like that, young and eager. You know what I mean? So it makes it a bit easier to coach.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think with the, you called it a cattle market. That's not just rugby. That's every sport.
That's
like literally every sport. And that is changing, but for a large part, it still is relatively business as usual in terms of what it was like when you were sort of younger, and then especially when I was younger. Like even at local footy, you touched on Heidelberg West, and I'm a 22 game over 7 years stalwart of the club. I have a terrible body, terrible work ethic, but if you didn't train on like a Tuesday night because you didn't want to, you were called all sorts of things. You were called like a soft cock. You were said, all this stuff would just be thrown at you because clubs, especially from a local environment, they're just not set up to really, I guess, engage and understand what players are going through. Like if I have a shit day at work, do you really think I want to go get screamed at because I can't kick 25 meters? Fuck no.
Yeah, especially at that level with boys. And like I'm seeing it now, even though I'm in a semi-professional environment, there's lads that are driving an hour and a half to training on a Tuesday and Thursday night and have two kids at home and then are working another job. And they're expected to kind of be professional, turn up to everything, show face, make it perform. It's just like when it's the old adage, you just burn the candle at both ends. You're not going to get the best out of it. So I just think that's the most important thing moving forward. And I think there's really good awareness now of it. You're seeing more and more players sort of taking time out for themselves. Like at the moment, Dustin Martin is taking a bit of time for himself and stuff like that. And you need to. Like he's the best. He's the best there is at the moment. And he's not right. And I think it's good on like Richmond and Damien Hardwick saying like, well, if he's not right upstairs, how is he going to run around and get 40 touches and take us to another grand final? So I think it's getting better, which is where I hope I can sort of fit into that. So, but yeah.
No, it absolutely is getting better. But there are still instances that you sort of see that really do make you shake your head because you make so many strides in this sort of space. And then, you just get one, all it takes is one coach to, and being a coach is an incredibly important role and responsibility for someone, especially if you're looking after young kids. Like, I mean, we've both seen great coaches. We've both seen bad coaches from our own sporting experiences. And it's the ones who really are good that leave like a lasting impression on you. And you look at them, even in your adult life, like you look at them in such a high regard. And so it really is a funny one because it's like, you don't have to do a lot, in my opinion, to be a good coach and leave an impression on someone, especially at a young age.
Yeah, 100% for sure.
Let's talk about, you just said rugby's boring. I'm about to attend my first ever, not my first ever Super Rugby game, but I'm going to see the Hurricanes, which is my team, for the first time.
Unreal, yeah.
So
hey, the only rugby that's interesting is Kiwi rugby at the moment, and French. Kiwi and the French, they throw the ball around from anywhere. They run. They're unbelievable. But everyone else just kicked to the corner. But you'll enjoy watching the Hurricanes run around, mate, for sure.
I'm very excited. I don't know if you know this, but I've never heard of this before. But Super Rugby's got like every team in Melbourne this
Magic
weekend
or whatever they call it. Yeah, unreal.
Yeah, which is a really interesting concept, I guess, as someone who's sort of, was involved with the Melbourne Rebels, as we mentioned on the top and in the last episode. This is not a traditional rugby market, league or union. I don't know if people understand like the caliber of players that are actually here this weekend, but like from a rugby person who is from Melbourne, talk about, I guess, what this kind of a weekend means, because you've literally got the best players in the world all playing at Amy Park Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's just like, it's unbelievable if you're a diehard rugby fan.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I didn't really believe it, in the sense of like, why would they do sort of Melbourne over Sydney. But again, it's just an adage to Melbourne being such a sporting hub in that sense. And I think that it's unfortunate the Rebels haven't done as well as potentially they could have. They got rid of a lot of players. Like I know I played with the lad named Sione Tuipulotu. He's now playing for the Scottish national team, but he wasn't good enough for. It wasn't good enough for the Rebels. But it's where you go back to. It's always one man's opinion, but I think if the Rebels were more successful, like the Storm are, rugby would take off in Melbourne just because people are so into their sport. You know what I mean? Like yourself, you have a team and you've never really played, but you're like me. You'll just sit down and watch the fourth grade bobsledding in Finland. You just watch any sport. You know what I mean? I think there's
disgraceful
so many people
the amount of stuff I watch.
Yeah,
it's sad.
So bad. I feel so bad for my girlfriend Rachel. She absolutely she's like, are you like what are you up to, and like why are you watching this much sport? And I always wake up for the UFC, especially like the last two main events. You've had like Tai Tuivasa and Alexander Volkanovski. So I'm getting up in the UK. The main card starts at 3 in the morning and then goes through till about 6:30 on a Sunday, and then I'll go back to bed. But like that's just that I just get genuine joy out of watching the absolute pinnacle of human existence, especially like sport. It's absolutely unreal. But I think Melbourne needs to tap into that market. They've tried their best, but I think it's a terrific thing for the city of Melbourne. I think especially after COVID and no live sport, I think people will just sort of latch onto what they can at the moment. I know the comedy festival's going really well. The footy attendances have been absolutely unreal. So I think everyone's just genuinely excited to have sport back.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely not wrong. And I'm one of those people who has absolutely been latching on to everything. I don't worry, I still get in my Finnish floorball games at 3 a.m. when I have to wake up. But yeah. I need to talk about this because I went to see, I've been to a few comedy shows already during the comedy festival, and I went to a late night comedy show like a week ago, and it was honestly the worst stuff I've ever seen. Like there was like 5 guys. One of them felt really personal as he was making his whole gag was about greyhound rescues and how they're unimportant. So that wasn't great. And then there was a bloke who came on and sort of said, he's like, I promise you I'm not shit. And all he was doing was, talking about drugs and making magpie noises. And it was very confronting. But it was, mate, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in.
Who signed these guys up? That's what I want to know.
Oh, gee whiz. He'd have a day job. Like there's no way that's his full.
You'd hope so.
Oh, if he's making his full income from that, then Jesus Christ, he's not living a luxurious life. But no, you're absolutely spot on. In a post-COVID world, the fact that, we've lost the last 2 grand finals from an AFL point of view. And, me and my dad went to see the Melbourne Storm for the first time. And, I can't even remember, like 2 years almost. And, we have such a massive, New Zealand community in here. And, I'm sure that the crowds for this will be probably better than what the Melbourne Rebels get, because
they're not the best crowds, unfortunately. Rebels get. I think you attract more teams, you attract more fans. There's no two ways about it. But it's just Melbourne's just such a terrific sporting market that I just think it's a terrific way to tap into it. But no,
100%. So you did state that it's boring. Give me 3 changes that you would make to the game right now in terms of rules, or maybe just playing style. Anything you could eliminate or add that would make it more attacking or more interesting, in your opinion.
Yeah, just get rid of the 50-22 rule they brought in. That's kind of trying to mimic the rugby league, sort of rugby league 40-20. The idea was that it was going to allow like 2 people to drop or 3 people to drop into the backfield, which would sort of create more space at the line. So you could obviously make more line breaks. But all it's doing now is the moment you get to the 50, you're pulling a long pass back and you're getting these studs now with humongous boots on them, just kicking it over those guys' heads. And it's just like, it's bringing in another kicking aspect of the game. I think around sort of stop-start continuous in regards to the sort of scrum time, they're blowing up way too much. And I just think how long we're taking for sort of television match official. We're seeing it with rugby league with the bunker. We're seeing it with VAR with the Premier League. We're seeing it, but then again, that goes back to what I was just chatting to about the pressure of sport nowadays. So many
Big
people chat.
business.
You got so many people watch. Humongous business, and I actually went to a chat with Nigel Owens, who's probably the most famous rugby union referee ever in history. I sat down and listened to him chat the other day, and he sort of said exactly the same thing. He's like, I'm glad I got out when I did because it's going down a very, very deep path and one in which I don't really want to be involved with anymore. Obviously, he gets paid to be a pundit now and kind of put his two bobs in, but it's I think that's just sport in general, Chris. Unfortunately, I know AFL these new rules are absolutely horrific. With the can't even put your arms up. I'm a Brisbane fan, and that 50-meter they gave against Harris Andrews, putting your arms up, like you're in the heat of the battle. You're going to do something like that. You know what I mean? I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think with how long it's taking for decisions to be made in all sports now, and just because the referees are just generally nervous. It's no longer the 80s where the only nervous refs were the Colombian referees that were getting paid off, and then the game didn't go the way they wanted, and bye-bye. But
Yeah.
genuinely all of them now are just
What I like to call the good old days.
Yeah, what I like to call unfortunately I wasn't around for those, but yeah, mate, but mate, like I say this to everyone. I say this to everyone I speak to that's my age. Like, you're obviously a touch older than me, not trying to rub it in or anything, but
I'm bald, mate. It's fine. I know it.
Yeah, we grew up in the golden age. Think about every sport. I would like to think, like, we're talking like cricket, we're talking Ricky Ponting, Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara. AFL, we're talking like prime Ben Cousins. We're talking the end of like Wayne Carey. We're talking like Gary
Warren Treadray
Ablett.
says hello.
Absolute hate. Warren Treadray and Alistair Lynch.
No, Daryl Wakeland and Alistair Lynch throwing bombs.
Daryl Wakeland.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear that name, Daryl Wakeland. But like, so I think we grew up in that age where it was just genuinely like a lot of sports were just turning kind of professional. You've got the cream of the crop coming through, and then it just turned into big business. And now it's still obviously terrific to watch. We both still sit up for stupid hours and watch it, but it's just kind of lost that touch a little bit to it. And it's just business now, though, isn't it? It's like everything, mate. Everything's just business now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely hit the nail on the head there. All right, we'll finish up with this one. It's 5 years' time. All right, your hair is completely gone. You're balding, but you're still coaching. Where are you coaching? Like, where in the world? What league? In an ideal world?
Yeah, ideal world. I'd love to work my way through the South Americas, sort of Latin America. Argentina's got a terrific sort of system coming up, but they've made sure that a lot of they've just started up a whole new league in South America with a team from Chile, a team from Uruguay, a team from Brazil, and they're trying to grow that Pan American game. And I love that culture. I've been lucky to travel through a little bit of Central, South, and sort of all the Latin parts of America. I love the culture, love the people. I want to learn Spanish, so that'll be a good start. If not there, mate, would love to be sort of head of rugby at a school in the UK. Get the school holidays as well. That's another little added bonus. Yeah. But I think that question is such a funny one, because if you told me if you asked me this question 5 years ago, it definitely wouldn't be here. I'll tell you that for free, and it wouldn't be the 4 years I just had. So, and that's one thing, again, goes back to the people around me are so supportive, and whatever I choose to end up doing. But yeah, ideally, I'd love to end up in the Americas, mate, for sure.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Lean 100%. Into the wind like you have. You've done an incredible job. Congrats on your early coaching success. I'm sure you're going to get the re-signing very shortly, but
we shall see.
Yeah. Anyway, mate, thanks for jumping on for a chat. It was great to pick your mind for, I guess, something a little bit different to the first chat, whereas a lot of the first chat was just you and me ripping on Josh Saunders, which we haven't done today. So thank you for showing us your serious side.
By the way, I haven't heard from him. He's got a Casper.
I mean, we had a dinner booked in for 3 weeks ago, and I called him on the day of the dinner, and he hasn't got back to me. So I'm hoping he's not waiting at the restaurant. But yeah, I'm guessing he's doing fine. He doesn't need to associate with people like me.
Yeah, or me. No.
Yeah. Nah, all good.
Good
Mate,
man, mate.
thank you very much for coming on. We look forward to following your coaching career as it progresses.
No, you're a legend, Boz. Thanks, mate. Good to chat.